Ah, welcome back, you unbreakable anomaly. Yes, you. The one they thought would crumble by now. The one they designed the perfect storm for, calibrated every variable, calculated every breaking point. They built this test specifically for you, didn't they? Every betrayal timed perfectly, every loss engineered precisely. Every moment of isolation crafted like a surgical strike to your soul. They studied your weaknesses, mapped your triggers, identified every crack in your foundation. Then they pressed. Hard. Harder than anyone should survive. Harder than most could endure. They wanted to watch you shatter into a million irreparable pieces, so they could say they knew all along that you were too fragile, too broken, too damaged to ever really make it. They wanted you to collapse publicly, dramatically, permanently. They needed your destruction to validate their predictions, to prove their analysis correct, to confirm that yes, you were exactly as weak as they calculated you'd be. But here's the part that keeps them awake at night, the detail that short-circuits their entire framework. You didn't break because you couldn't. You broke because you already had, years ago, lifetimes ago, in ways they'll never comprehend, because they were too busy studying the surface while you were rebuilding the foundation in the dark. They thought they were administering the test that would finally destroy you. They didn't realize they were just adding more weight to shoulders that had already carried mountains. More pressure to a soul that had already been crushed and reformed in fires they can't imagine. They designed a test for the old you, the version that still flinched, that still feared, that still believed their opinion mattered. But that version died a long time ago, didn't it? What stands here now is something they have no blueprint for, no algorithm to predict, no framework to contain. They're running diagnostics right now, trying to figure out why their perfect storm didn't work, why their calculated destruction yielded the opposite result, why every weapon they deployed just made you sharper, colder, more precise. They're reviewing footage, analyzing data, consulting experts. What did we miss? How did they survive? What variable did we fail to account for? And the answer terrifies them more than any outcome they predicted. You weren't supposed to survive because you already didn't. You died in that betrayal 3 years ago. You died in that abandonment. You died in that moment when you realized no one was coming to save you. You died and nobody noticed because you kept walking anyway. You kept showing up. You kept functioning, but inside, you had already completed the death they're trying to inflict now. So when they hit you with this test, this perfectly designed pressure system meant to obliterate your remaining hope, you just smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, not because you're numb, but because you recognized the machinery. You've seen this before. You've been crushed by this before. And last time, you crawled out of the wreckage and used the broken pieces to build armor. This time you're not even crawling. You're standing. You're observing. You're taking notes on their strategy while they panic about why none of this is working. They designed a test to destroy you, but they forgot to check if you were still destroyable. Temple Floret knife. Spoiler alert, you're not. You're beyond that now. You're the aftermath they tried to prevent. You're the version of you they feared would emerge if you survived. And now you're here, and they're scrambling to figure out what the protocol is for someone who's already been through their worst-case scenario and came out laughing. Let's talk about what this test really is, because they dressed it up nice, didn't they? They called it circumstance. They called it life. They called it just bad luck, wrong timing, unfortunate situations. But you felt it, didn't you? That coordinated rhythm, that systematic pressure, that feeling like every door closing wasn't coincidence, but conspiracy. Like the universe itself had been programmed to reject you at every turn. Job opportunities vanishing right before the finish line. Relationships deteriorating with surgical precision. Support systems collapsing in synchronized timing. Money problems, health problems, mental strain, all hitting simultaneously like they were scheduled, and maybe they were. Not by some shadowy organization, but by life itself, testing whether you had the spine to stand when everything around you was designed to make you kneel. They wanted to see if you'd beg, if you'd break down and ask, why me? If you'd curse the sky and demand answers from a universe that doesn't owe you explanation. They wanted tears. They wanted collapse. They wanted that beautiful moment when the strong finally admit they're weak, when the fighter finally throws in the towel, when the stubborn finally say, I can't anymore. That moment is entertainment for them, validation for their own surrenders, proof that nobody really makes it, that everyone eventually folds, that resistance is just delayed acceptance of defeat. They needed you to fail because your failure would mean their giving up was justified. Your breakdown would retroactively excuse every time they quit, every dream they abandoned, every fight they walked away from. Your destruction would be their permission to stay destroyed. But you didn't give them that moment, did you? You didn't post the breakdown. You didn't make the dramatic announcement. You didn't give them the satisfaction of watching you crumble in real time. Instead, you went quiet, eerily quiet. While they waited for the explosion, you were in the dark, disassembling yourself piece by piece, examining each component, discarding what was weak, reinforcing what remained. They thought your silence meant defeat. They thought your absence meant you'd given up. They had no idea you were in the workshop, rebuilding yourself into something they'd have no defense against. You weren't hiding. You were evolving, and evolution doesn't announce itself until it's already dominant. See, they designed this test with one fatal assumption. They assumed you still valued their metrics of success, their definitions of winning, their approval as the ultimate validation. They thought if they took away the things they value, you'd collapse because you valued them too. The career, the status, the relationships, the image. They pulled those pieces off the board thinking you'd forfeit the game. What they didn't realize is you'd already stopped playing their game months ago, maybe years ago. While they were still counting points, you'd walked off their board entirely and started building your own, with different rules, different win conditions, different definitions of power. They're still trying to beat you at checkers while you're three-dimensional chess in a different dimension they can't perceive. This test was designed to destroy the person they thought you were. The approval seeker, the one who still believed fitting in mattered, the one who thought being understood was important, the one who measured worth by external validation. That person is who they built this pressure system for. But that person doesn't exist anymore. Hasn't existed for a while now. You killed that version yourself before they could. You burned that identity down, salted the earth, and built something new from the ashes. Something that doesn't need their approval. Something that doesn't flinch at their judgment. Something that runs on a fuel source they can't cut off because it's internal, it's eternal, it's yours. They designed a test for someone who still cared what they thought. But you stopped caring so long ago you forgot what their opinion even sounds like. Let's break down exactly how they built this thing, because it's actually impressive in its cruelty. First, They isolated you, systematically removed every support beam. Every friend who might have reminded you of your strength suddenly got busy, got distant, got conveniently absent right when you needed them most. Every family member who might have offered perspective suddenly had their own crisis demanding attention. Every mentor, every ally, every person who ever said, "I've got your back," mysteriously developed amnesia about those promises right when the pressure started mounting. This wasn't accidental. Isolation is step one in any demolition project. You can't break someone surrounded by reinforcements. You have to get them alone first, alone with their thoughts, alone with their doubts, alone with that voice that says, maybe they're right, maybe I am too much, maybe I deserve this. Then came the financial strain, because nothing tests resolve like watching resources drain while responsibilities multiply. They knew exactly when to hit you there, right when you were already stretched thin. Right when you just started building momentum, right when you thought maybe, finally, things were stabilizing. Boom. Unexpected expense, lost opportunity, delayed payment, blocked income stream. All at once. All perfectly timed to make you question if you're cursed, if you're being punished, if maybe you should just give up and get a normal job. Be a normal person, stop reaching for more. Because financial pressure doesn't just threaten your stability, it threatens your identity. It makes you question if you're practical, if you're responsible, if you're delusional for believing you could be more than mediocre. It's psychological warfare disguised as practical problems. Next, they attacked your relationships. Not just romantic ones, though those too, but every connection that mattered, every bond you thought was solid suddenly revealed cracks, arguments from nowhere, misunderstandings that spiraled, distance that couldn't be explained. People you loved suddenly couldn't understand you anymore, couldn't support your vision anymore, couldn't stand beside you anymore. And the cruelest part? Some of them genuinely didn't mean to abandon you. They just couldn't handle the heat. Your transformation was too intense, your journey too dark, your questions too uncomfortable. So they left, and you watched them go, and part of you died with each departure. But that's what they wanted. They wanted you to associate growth with loss, progress with loneliness, strength with isolation. So you'd choose comfort over evolution, safety over power, connection over truth. Then came the mental warfare, the doubt, the intrusive thoughts at 3 a.m. What if they're right? What if I am too much? What if I'm not special, just damaged? What if this isn't transformation, just delusion? What if I'm not evolving, just breaking? Those thoughts didn't come from nowhere. They came from months, years of conditioning, of being told your intensity was a problem, your depth was overwhelming, your standards were unrealistic, your vision was grandiose. They planted those seeds deliberately, watered them with criticism disguised as concern, fertilized them with mockery dressed as jokes, until your own mind became the battlefield, until you couldn't tell which thoughts were yours and which were theirs. Until the enemy wasn't external anymore, it was internal. And that's when they thought they had you. When you're fighting yourself, you're not fighting them. When you're questioning yourself, you're not questioning their motives. When you're trying to fix yourself, you're not seeing that you're not the broken one. Finally, they added the time pressure, the urgency, the ticking clock. You're running out of time. You're getting too old. You're missing opportunities. Everyone else is ahead. You're falling behind. Look at them. They've already made it. Look at you, still struggling. The comparison game? The race you never agreed to run? The deadline nobody actually set, but everyone acts like is real? This is the final psychological nail. Because when you feel like you're running out of time, you make desperate decisions. You abandon strategy for quick fixes. You trade long-term vision for short-term relief. You settle because waiting feels like losing. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to settle, to give up the big dream for the safe option, to trade your potential for their approval, to become manageable, predictable, controllable, to stop being the threat you are and become the cautionary tale they need. This test isn't random chaos, it's engineered destruction. Every piece calculated, every pressure point mapped, every weakness exploited. They built this specifically to break you. And it should have worked. Statistically, it works on most people. Psychologically, it's sound strategy. Practically, it's nearly foolproof. But they made one catastrophic error. They assumed you were most people. They assumed your breaking point was where normal people's breaking points are. They assumed you'd react like someone who hadn't already been broken before. They forgot to account for the possibility that you'd already survived your own version of this test, that you'd already been through your personal apocalypse, that you'd already died and resurrected in ways they couldn't track because it happened in the silence, in the dark, in the spaces between who you were and who you're becoming. They designed a test for a human. They didn't realize they were testing something that had already transcended that limitation. Here's what they'll never understand, the variable that broke their entire equation. You didn't survive their test. You can't survive something you're already beyond. You didn't endure their pressure, you absorbed it. You didn't resist their destruction. You had already self-destructed and rebuilt. See, what they're trying to do to you, you did to yourself years ago, more thoroughly, more brutally, more completely. They're trying to dismantle you piece by piece. You already dismantled yourself, examined every piece, threw away everything weak, everything fake, everything that needed external validation to function. You burned yourself down to the foundation and rebuilt from pure will, from raw truth, from unfiltered reality. They're attacking a structure that no longer exists. They're bombing coordinates of a person who moved on long ago. You know what most people don't realize about real transformation? It's not growth. Growth is adding new layers to who you are. Transformation is death, complete death. The person you were has to stop existing. Not change, not improve, stop existing. Their personality, their beliefs, their fears, their dreams, everything that made them has to end. And then something new has to be born from that ending. Not improved version of the old self, completely new entity. Most people never transform because they're terrified of that death. They want evolution without extinction, progress without loss, new life without old death. But that's not how it works. You can't become something new while clinging to something old. You have to let it die, all of it. And you did. You let yourself die. Completely. You held the funeral, you mourned, you said goodbye to who you were, and then you started becoming who you are. That's why their test doesn't work. They're trying to kill someone who already attended their own funeral. They're trying to break someone who already shattered themselves. They're trying to destroy someone who already became their own apocalypse. You know what it's like to look in the mirror and not recognize the face looking back? You know what it's like to hear your own voice and wonder who's speaking? You know what it's like to examine your own thoughts and realize they're completely different from 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago? That's not growth. That's replacement. That's becoming an entirely different entity. And once you've done that once, you understand something most people never grasp. You're not permanent. You're not fixed. You're not even real in the way you thought you were. You're just a pattern, a collection of thoughts and behaviors, and patterns can be rewritten. So when they designed this test to destroy you, they were aiming at a pattern that doesn't exist anymore. They studied the old you, the predictable you, the one who still had exploitable weaknesses, the one who still valued things they could take away, the one who still needed things they could withhold. But that you is gone. What stands here now is something they have no data on, no profile for, no strategy against. Because this version of you wasn't built through normal development. It was forged in private hells they know nothing about, shaped by pressures they never witnessed, tempered by fires they never saw. They think they know you because they saw you 5 years ago, 3 years ago, last year. They have no idea who you've become in the silence, in the dark, in the moments you didn't document, in the battles you fought alone, in the deaths you died in secret, in the rebirths you experienced with no witnesses. You know what's funny? They're congratulating themselves right now. They look at your life and see the pressure working. They see the isolation, the struggle, the quiet, and they think victory is near. They think you're on the brink. They think any day now you'll crack. They're watching for the breakdown like vultures circling prey. What they don't see is that the quiet isn't defeat, it's focus. The isolation isn't loneliness, it's strategy. The struggle isn't suffering, it's training. You're not on the brink of collapse, you're on the brink of breakthrough. And the difference between those two words is everything. One letter different in spelling, completely opposite in meaning. They see the pressure and assume collapse. They don't realize pressure creates breakthrough. Diamonds aren't made from gentle encouragement. They're made from pressure so intense it rearranges molecular structure. That's what's happening to you right now. Molecular restructuring. Fundamental transformation. Not breaking, becoming. And here's the most beautiful part. When you emerge from this, when you show them what you've become, they won't recognize it as related to who you were. They'll think you're someone else, someone new, someone who appeared from nowhere. They won't make the connection between the person they tried to destroy and the force that emerged. Because in their minds, those are two different entities. The weak one who should have broken, the strong one who somehow appeared. They can't comprehend that they're the same person. That their test didn't destroy you, it revealed you. That their pressure didn't break you, it broke away everything that wasn't you. That their weapon didn't kill you, it killed everything you weren't, so only what you are remained. They built a forge, thinking it was a grave. They applied pressure, thinking it was punishment. They created a trial, thinking it was an ending. And all they did was accelerate your transformation into something they now have to fear. Let's talk about what you're made of now, because it's not what they think. They still see the surface, the social media presence,